Hi there, welcome back to the Gordy and Gubbs Podcast. I'm John Gubber in the studio, and over in Seattle, our good friend Gordon Hill. How are you, Gordon?
Very well, thanks, John. Lovely to be with you again and having a nice, good chin wag.
Absolutely. We did think we'd chat today because it's the international break, but I must admit I didn't expect United to have played 3 games and to be -3 on the goal difference and already 6 points behind City and Liverpool. What do you think of it so far?
Well, if I don't answer so quickly, you'll know how I feel about it. It's disappointing, very sad, but you've got to look at the situation and say it's the start of the season. New players come in. They were coming in because that's what Ten Hag wanted. That's the board have backed him. And so, yeah, now he's just got to get the results on the field.
I've always backed Erik Ten Hag, probably a little bit more enthusiastically than you have, because I know you've always wanted him to kind of prove himself. There's been a lot of knee-jerk reactions all across social media by a lot of United fans, or followers rather than fans maybe, saying the manager shouldn't have been kept and we're trying to get rid of him. But I'm reassured by the fact that Omar Barada, Jason Wilcox and Dan Ashworth have all publicly backed Erik Ten Hag. I know in the old days a vote of confidence was never a good thing, but it seems that's the only sensible thing to do at the moment because the season hasn't really started, has it?
No, and I think that's, everybody is jumping to this, we should have got rid of him and we shouldn't have got rid of him. And yes, to be honest with you, John, I think that it's a new season. I think he's not started off very well. The pressure's now been put back on him. He's had the players that he wanted. He's bought the players he wanted. So now I think everybody's saying, well, I certainly am. He said, well, you've got what you wanted. Now show us.
Absolutely. I'm not blindly following Erik Ten Hag because he's got to prove himself. And anybody who's a realist will realise that 3 points from 9 games, the pressure's already on Erik Ten Hag. And at the start of the season, it's all about getting momentum, and our momentum is in the wrong direction. So how important is it going to be to beat Southampton in that return match when we come back after the international break?
Well, it's going to be very important because he's going to have a week off. He's going to have international players that go to their different countries and play. They're going to come back. Hopefully, you get no injuries. He's working with players that are not in the international squads. Rashford's got a chance to be able to get a little bit more training underneath his belt, get his confidence back because he's lacking it at this moment in time. But you expect the turmoil to be settling down. And the problem that we had, I think, was that we had Liverpool in the third game of the season. That, normally you don't meet them and maybe till about 5 or 6 weeks into the season. But we got them, and they're hot. They're playing very well indeed. And I think, it's like he said, it's still work in progress. But the problem being is, John, the supporters are not looking at that. They want it. They want the results now, and you've got the backroom staff that have backed him. The people above have said yes, we're going to stick with him. I think you can't keep changing. It would be nice for them to go out and get a result against Southampton because then at least supporters and the board will be able to sit there and say, well, something's happening, It's going to be a very tricky one for the next week, but something that he's got to work on. I mean, that's part and parcel of being a manager.
You've got to accept the reality of the fact that United aren't ready. And Liverpool, there's no point in sugarcoating it. Liverpool really, they kind of battered United, really. With 3, it could have been 6. And they're obviously a much better team than United at the moment. So fans are frustrated, and it's easy to throw your toys out of the pram and say the team's rubbish, get rid of the manager, get rid of the players, whatever. But the reality is we've got players who haven't started yet. We've got players who've not had time to bed in with the team. And we've got to give him a little bit of a chance, haven't we? Otherwise, there's no point in giving him a new extended contract and letting him start the new season.
You can't do that, John. Not in today's game. You can't just get rid of. You've got to give a bit of leeway. And you've got to let him put his plan into motion. He's passed the first test, which is he's got his players that he wanted. Okay, the board have backed him and given him what he wanted. He's now out there putting this team together. He came out with it a couple of weeks ago, if you remember rightly, in the States, saying they're not ready yet. Everybody says, "Yeah, oh yeah, but you got pre-season." These new players that haven't played have got to settle in with the players that are part of the squad at this moment. He's got rid of players. It's turmoil at the moment, which I think he needs this week to be able to settle down and look and see who he wants to play and what positions he wants to play. So this might have come as a bit of a grace for him in being able to say, well, okay, we've got a week, guys. All his coaching staff are going to be there. I know what they're going through. I know exactly what they're saying, and they're just going to hope that they don't get any injuries and everybody comes back fit to be able to go to Southampton.
We're handicapped yet again by pre-season when Rasmus Hojlund got injured. So for me, the international break is a godsend because it gets it a little bit closer to when Rasmus Hojlund can make his comeback. And anticipated return date for Rasmus Hojlund and Luke Shaw potentially is the game away at Southampton. So it would be a big boost for United to have those players back. But I'm just wondering what you think of the new guy, because Xerxes, he scored on his debut when he came off the bench against Fulham on that Friday night, and he'd only been on for a few minutes, so it's a perfect way for a striker to start his career at Manchester United. But since then, it's been a little bit frustrating because he had that goal that was disallowed when he tried to steal it off Garnacho, and if he'd let it go in, we'd have probably won that game at Brighton. And maybe a more experienced striker, do you think he should have let it go into the net?
I think basically strikers have got a chance of putting it in the net. They don't think about passing it. I think all good strikers, you look at Haaland. Haaland doesn't do that. He just hit back of the net. Foden, back of the net. De Bruyne, back of the net. I think we saw that when Rashford tried to pass it to Garnacho, and it was a bad pass where he said Rashford hit it. So you have a go at Rashford for not shooting then, but then again, a lot of other people said, and if he'd have missed it, they'd have said, well, why didn't you pass it? So you're a devil if you do, and you're a devil if you don't. And I've actually been in that situation as well. So to me, I'll be honest with you, John. It's goals aren't coming, and that's going to be the biggest question mark.
Yeah, that's the biggest worry for me because I don't see where the goals are coming from, and we haven't got enough strikers. But I must admit, when I was on pre-season tour and I saw Marcus Rashford training, I thought his body language, his demeanour, he looked a lot more positive and confident. I thought he was going to come back a lot stronger. And I feel that when he missed a couple of chances in the Community Shield at Wembley, it sort of knocked his confidence again. And you mentioned that chance he had at the end of the Fulham game. For me, the Rashford at his prime would have lashed that ball into the net and would have been saying, isn't it great to have Marcus Rashford back? But do you think it's going to help him having Ruud van Nistelrooy on the training ground? Because Ruud van Nistelrooy's obviously got an important role there to try and bring the best out of Marcus Rashford.
Must have. I mean, you're looking at it. You've got one of the best strikers in Van Nistelrooy, and he done a great job. And I think he'll be trying to put his confidence in Rashford, and he might be trying to change a little. And we've seen Rashford score goals which Van Nistelrooy wouldn't have scored, and we've seen Van Nistelrooy score goals that Rashford wouldn't have scored. And two different players, but the number one priority here to me would be putting the ball in the back of the net, whether it hits your knee, hits your thigh, hits your backside. You put the ball in the net. That is the biggest confidence giver you can possibly get and have. If a ball hits you and go in, and people say, well, at the end of it, well, it hit his thigh. But you don't. You look at the result. Doesn't matter what it hit. At least I scored. And that's something that I think that Rashford has got to get over. He's got to get back to what he's good at doing. And basically, Van Nistelrooy is just going to get him in there, coach him, and strike. And, hopefully it will come back for him. All it is confidence.
Now, I've got a question from Tony Hughes, who one of the organisers of the Red Devils of San Diego. And he saw Marcus Rashford pre-season, and he's got this question directly to you, Gordon, because he thinks that Marcus Rashford has obviously got a lot of pressure on him, and back in your day, if you needed to sort of be taken out the firing line, you'd be put into the reserves. So not having a reserve team for Marcus to step down into, do you think that's a hindrance? And do you think, how do we get around that kind of problem? Because he's basically trying to rediscover his confidence and his form in the glare of the public spotlight. And as you said, the pressure of missing, if he misses, he's a villain, and he scores, he's a hero. There's no, it's black and white. There's nothing in between, is there? So not having the luxury of going down to the reserves is a little bit of a problem, isn't it?
Well, I think it's been a problem ever since we found out that the reserves was not being scrapped. It's just being like an age, under 23s, under 21s. The biggest thing that a club thrives on has got to be its reserves. We've seen it at Chelsea with the guy having 40, 50 players and only wanting 24 in his squad to train. What do you do with the other ones? Well, in our days, we used to be, the reserves was called the midweek league, and if you weren't playing on a Saturday in the first team, or you weren't in the first team, you played in the reserves, and you got yourself a game to keep match fit, so that you would be able to, if you was called up for a Saturday, you'd be able to play in that game. But nowadays it's under 23s, and the mentality of a player is, well, they've got 3 players that play in their first team in the reserves. It's that competitive mentality that the reserves are for this. The reserves are for players that are not on form and in the first team. The reserves are for injured players coming back to regain their form. And it's there for the youth team to come forward and the good youth team players to get a game, to get prepared, to get called up to the first team. If that's gone and they say, well, we're playing the under 23s or the under 21s, I think it should be scrapped, and I think it should be reserves only, the reserve team. And basically, we used to have an A team. So you had the reserves and an A team. So that was the stepping stone. But now it seems that they've thrown age limits on. And that, to me, is a stumbling block.
I must admit, personally, I don't mind having the under-18s and the under-23s. And United have got a great production line. We've got kids that keep coming through from the academy. The problem is, you can't imagine someone like Marcus Rashford, who's a star, going to play for the under-23s. It doesn't really work, does it? So maybe there should be some reserve games that exist in between, so that you can give players like Marcus Rashford a chance to go and rediscover his form. I mean, I'm just wondering, when you played, would you have had the advantage of going and playing in the reserves occasionally? And do you remember occasions when it might have happened for you?
Yeah, the manager would say, he would recognise you may not be confident and said, oh, listen, I want you to go with the reserves. I mean, Sexton done that when he sold me. He sent me to the reserves at Preston. We were playing, I think, QPR that day, and he sent me to Preston. He said on the Friday, he called me 2 or 3 times to say, no, you're going with the first team, then you're going in reserves, then you're going to the first team. Eventually, I went to the Preston game in the reserves, quite happy to go there and get a game. Called off at half-time and told him that they'd accepted a bid from Derby. So the reserves really are keeping players fit and get in a game, because that's all they really want to do, is get a game and keep their fitness up so that they can challenge. And as I said, it's a stepping stone for the youth team, for players that are injured and coming back, and for players that are not on form. And that reserve manager is just as important as the first team manager, because he gives the scouting report saying such and such is ready now. I think and then they'll take him back in the fold. So it was like a pecking order, but it was like you relied upon that reserve team manager. Yes, you've got managers now and coaches for all different age groups. And basically, yeah, it's great, but I still think the reserve system should be the number one system for the likes of, as you said, Marcus Rashford coming back, Luke Shaw coming back. So you don't have to fix up games behind closed doors. If you've got a midweek fixture and it's a midweek league, the reserve team and the young players still want to win that league. And United used to be able to win that league, the midweek league. but you still had good players that were coming out, and it'll be okay. One of the first team players comes down. Why? He had a slight knock at the weekend, and we want to see how he is. It's a nice way of trying out players as well. So the systems, yes, definitely changed, John.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to put all the focus on Marcus Rashford, but I did feel that in the game against Liverpool, he put in two superb crosses in the second half, and if Xerxes had taken either or both of those chances, people would have perceived him to have had a better game than he did. But I just want to talk generally about wingers. We obviously got rid of Jadon Sancho. Not everybody's happy with that. A lot of us are very happy because we think he just couldn't really exist in the squad after what happened previously. But I'm just wondering what we've got left. We've got Ahmad, who for me was a standout player on pre-season. We've got Garnacho. I'd personally like to see Garnacho on the left and Ahmad on the right and give Marcus Rashford a break. I mean, what do you think of these players? What do you think of Ahmad and Garnacho?
It comes all down to this reorganised way of playing. You know, you're now taking players from the right wing to the left wing to the right wing. Centre forwards don't know if they're coming or going. But if you look at it, this inverted system has just been around for generations and just been renamed. That's all it is. Stevie and I used to do it, used to say, right, okay, used to have a couple of players, used to say, we'd play against Derby, and they say, right, okay, Stevie, go over there and give Rod Thomas a go in and see which way he wants to go. Gordy, you get on the right and have a crack at that. So instead of going down the line and whipping it in, you'd come in and have a dig. What's happening now is these players that are playing on the wings are now coming inside and they're trying to shoot. They're trying to score. And we're seeing goals that basically just, to me, they're not going down the line. They're not getting to the byline. The most dangerous ball in the game is get to the byline and whip the ball back or across. But then you've got that scenario, John, where you have to have strikers that are willing to get on the end of it. We had like the likes of Stewie Pearson, Jimmy Greenoff, Joey Jordan. I mean, these players you're talking would bust their butts to get on the end of a ball that you threw in there. And like I said the other day on my Twitter, if you haven't got wingers that can get to the byline and cross the ball, it makes a striker not go into certain places. So then you have this scenario where you say, you know, play the ball in there, and the forward will say, well, play it in there, play it. And if you don't, then the forward will have a go at you. But if you throw it in there and the forward's not on the end of it, you'll have a go at that forward saying, well, hold on, I'm getting to the byline, I'm whipping the ball across. Who's challenging? And of course, we haven't had, what I call, United haven't had out and out centre forwards, two strikers that can challenge. I mean, you had the old fashioned Keegan and Toshak, you had Pearson and Greenoff, you had Joe Jordan and Jimmy Greenoff. So you had these players that would complement each other. Andy Gray was fabulous at doing that. Hartford that used to play at Everton. You know, so basically the bottom line would be is if you've got to serve your forwards, you have to deliver it, but you have to practice the crossing the ball. And I used to work tiresome with Frank Blunstone, the former Chelsea and England winger. I used to start about 10 yards over the halfway line. He'd knock the ball down the line, and I'd have to get there and whip the ball in. And now, then he'd knock it further to the byline, and then I'd get there and I'd have to play the ball back. So eventually what happened, and I spent hours doing it, and like I say, I saw it beautiful on Saturday with Mo Salah. And I'm not saying anything about the result, but the execution of when he just went down the line and clipped the ball to the far post, that is a striker's delight. That is something that you work on in a training session. And basically, if you've got two strikers that are challenging, you're going to get half a chance of putting that ball in the net because you're going towards the goal and the defenders are trying to head it backwards. So anything can happen. And the goal is would be very worried. And I can't see that. I haven't seen it, but I saw it Saturday, and I had to comment on it because it was delightful. It was wow. And I think that's what it is. You've had Giggsy that could do it, sharp. So
You're talking about good old-fashioned wing play. I mean, the game has changed a lot.
has it changed, John?
The best player on the pitch on Sunday was Mo Salah, but he's almost playing like a good old-fashioned winger. And we haven't really got wingers, proper wingers these days that cross the ball for the strikers.
So what's changed, John?
What we would sort of talk about as being wingers are not really wingers anymore. They're kind of forwards.
No, they're not.
And maybe they're too greedy. Maybe instead of like running and trying to shoot, because 9 times out of 10 they miss, maybe they should be going back to being old-fashioned wingers and crossing the ball. Don't you think that would help us?
It would do if they are proper wingers. They are players that are playing out there that aren't wingers. The continental technical way of doing it now is, okay, we'll build up. We'll play it wide, and whoever's out there, you can either get it in. But we complained about when a winger gets to the byline, he cuts back and plays it back. We had a go at that. We first had a go at an overlapping defender who couldn't cross a ball. These are all factors, and then we talk about inverted wingers, which was part and parcel of the game. It's not changed in that sense, John. It's just their terminology and the way the new coaches want to do it is that way. And to me, it kills a winger. It kills a person that can cross a ball. You had Beckham that couldn't do anything else but cross and hit a ball, and was successful with it. But you see now that you've got players on the end of it. I mean, you see him play a ball and want to walk the ball in the back of the net. I saw this. The Italians brought that into the game. Walk it across, play little tic-tac, then all of a sudden, try to walk the ball in the net. That. If you look at that, everybody's go, wow, Charlie, what a great ball by Mo Salah. Hold on a second. That's been for generations, those type of balls, John. So everybody talks about the new technique. It's not technical. It's something that's been in the game for generations. And yet these new coaches say, well, okay, we're going to do it. That's fine. But those new techniques that they're bringing in have been in existence for donkey's years.
I might be stealing one of your quotes, but for me, it's a simple game complicated by coaches. And what I worry about is that we're all waiting for Rasmus Hojlund to come back. But if we're going to play the same way and we're not going to give him service, we're kind of almost like banging our heads against a brick wall. So unless things change, where are the goals going to come from? That's what I'm worried about.
That's exactly, you hit the nail smack on the head there. Where are the goals going to come from? Normally, two good strikers that get you 10, 15, 20 goals. Then you'll get your wingers that might add 6, 7 goals each. Then you get your midfielders, that will get you 7, 8, 9 goals. That's a league-winning goals. That will put you up the top. We don't have that anywhere. Oh, we're relying on Fernandes to put the ball, and yet he can't do everything. You can't rely on him to say, okay, fine. And Rasmus, you can't. He's not ready yet. He's still got to learn that job of being a striker. I think that Van Nistelrooy will be in there and he will be telling him where to run, how to run. He can't do it on his own. He's not experienced enough to do it on his own. He's not a Haaland. And yet we need to be able to teach. Number one, you should be able to teach the wingers who you want as proper wingers, not just so-so wingers, proper wingers. Bang, bang, cross it, bang, cross it. Time and time until Frank used to say to me, Frank Blunstone used to say to me, Gord, I don't care how many times we do this, we only need one in a game. And John, Rashford scored crossed two in a game that was tell you what, come on. You need half a dozen. You need other players challenging. You need players that are hungry to get in there and challenge. You need all the effort from the wingers to the forwards. When you become a good winger, John, A good winger can pick out a player. A winger that's learning the job puts that ball into space for that forward to get onto. Now, the combination, if you put them together, is lethal, because all of a sudden you get a great cross in, pinpointed to the man's head, and we saw it. We've seen it. But it only happens every now and then because people are under this illusion. We had overlapping defenders. So the winger was brought inside a bit. Then you have now one striker up front. They've got to be one hell of a crosser of a ball to get one striker, especially with 3 or 4 defenders, especially of the Van Dijk calibre, that will just pick out, and the Arsenal defenders that will pick you off. So you've got to be able to get your strike force all working on the same, but you've got to get your wingers, and it's still the most dangerous position on the field. You get past your defender, and good wingers, John, only needed 6 inches. I get 6 inches, I whip that ball in. I get 6 inches, I'm going to hit that target. We now have to go past it. We now have to go past this. To me, it frustrates me when I see a guy go on, and I sit here and I'm going, go on, have a go at him. Go on, he's ready. And you know he's ready. And a half a yard, whip the ball in. It doesn't come. It turns round. They play the ball back and go across the field again and try. That's boring and frustrating to me.
I think we've identified where the problem is insofar that we're lacking goals and where the goal's going to come from. I would like to say that I am optimistic that we're sorting out the defence, because I think we've got De Ligt and Lenny Yoro, who are both. Yoro may be a player for the future, but he's obviously got great potential, and it seems like we've got good options now at the back if we don't have too many injuries. But my big fear is that I felt like you could drive a bus through the midfield, never mind the defence. And it's whether or not we've got enough in midfield. We've got this new guy, Manuel Ugarte. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And a lot of high hopes for him. And a lot of people are already writing off Casemiro. But Casemiro's not that old. He's only early 30s. And he does look a lot leaner this year. So my question really is, do you think, have we got enough in midfield? Because it seems that if we're short of strikers, or strikers are injured, Erik ten Hag has got this temptation to play with a false number 9. Have we got enough now in midfield to play that way? And where do you think Erik ten Hag's optimism comes from that we're going to be up among winning trophies at the end of the season? Or do you think that's just an illusion?
Well, it's a good question. And if you take, for instance, the Liverpool game, Liverpool always had 2 in midfield to control that. We didn't. We had gaps so big that you could drive a bus through, as you rightfully said. You've got players there. You've got new players coming in which haven't been bedded in yet, which we don't know is going to happen. Our defence cannot be that clever if we're letting 3 or 4 goals in. So we've now got to look at, say, well, okay, what does Ten Hag want to do with that defence? How's he going to play? Who's he going to play? Where is he going to play? I mean, I'm looking at it, and to me, Casemiro has been a great player. Don't get me wrong. For me, I saw him in 3 or 4 games. He can't get back. He gets exposed a lot, and you can't expect a player all the time to be immaculate. And you could see that. And I'm speaking as a professional. When I played, I knew when my days were a bit numbered, when the younger players and the smart and not smarter players, but the younger players were going past me and leaving me. That is a sign. And to me, I've seen that sign with Casemiro. And I'm not having a go at him. He's been a great player, but Eriksen's another one. Been a great player. I have no problem. He'd come back from, everything. But to me, it's a time to move on. And I think with the younger players that you've got, if Ten Hag's going to go forward, he's got to look with everybody going forward and not just 9 players. United can't play with 9, 10 players. They need the whole squad or the whole team, 11. And then, you're looking around and you're looking at the keeper. The keeper now, you don't have if he's going to play a silly ball or a good ball. You don't know if he's going to try and dribble or he's not going to try and dribble. He's going to do something. So those situations must obviously concern Ten Hag. Would he have liked a result? Yes. He didn't get a result. So now he's got a week to be able to do it, John. And like you said, defence, who do you play? Midfield, who do you play? McTominay, I thought they could have kept McTominay, to be honest with you. I think he was a worker, and I think with the right manager, he could have said, listen, we need somebody to go out there and to just scare the living daylights out of these midfielders and hold. He's got your goals, but we don't know the circumstances of why. But I don't think I'd have got rid of him.
I totally agree. I'd like to mention, I'd like to bring on another point about Scott McTominay, but the thing I was going to say about Casemiro, for me, he's still a very experienced quality player and he probably can contribute, but the reality is he's no way he's going to play every game, especially in this season. We're going to have 2 games a week for the season with the expanded Europa League. So for me, it was a huge mistake getting rid of Scott McTominay, but one of the potential reasons behind that is, like we saw at Chelsea, they had to get rid of Conor Gallagher. We saw a player at Newcastle to get rid of, Elliot Anderson. And Scott McTominay's left United, but that's partly because of PSR and the need to balance the books. And to be able to sell a player like Scott McTominay, who's cost nothing as he comes through the academy, it's pure profit. So it's frustrating to me that we've got this great academy, but we're being almost forced to get rid of one of our players who could have been a great squad player for us, who I think we would have needed this season. What do you think about that whole management of the game?
We spoke about it briefly before, and to be honest with you, the most important person now at the club seems to be the accountant, because he's the one that's going to be the PSR is going to be in his hands all the time. And if you look at United, they bought for 200 million and got 100 million back, so that we're looking and saying, well, okay, did we get the right buys? Didn't we get the right buys? Can we afford this? Accountant's going to be the number one in the club, and we can see that. And I've been reading, stories, about St. Jim's team and what they're going to do and what they're looking at. And to be honest with you, I'm a bit surprised, because I read and I hear and I look at the Chelsea scenario, and they say, well, they've got nine goalkeepers, they have 9 midfielders, they have X amount. It looks like they bought every Tom, Dick and Harry, and what they're doing is farming them out. But if you look at it in the business sense, to me, football is becoming this way, where I will buy all the good talent and I will rent it out for $1. 2-3 years time, I'll sell it for $300. So what they're doing is it's a bit like going to the market, and buying a prize racehorse. He's only a gelding, he's only a foal at the moment, but in 2 years' time, we'll farm him out. And that's what's happening, is they're farming players out to different clubs. And if you think about it, John, they've got 9 goalkeepers, 3 goalkeepers have gone out. Now if they're sold, say for instance they've gone out to a lower division clubs to get experience, which is really what we talked about at the beginning, which is the reserves, but you haven't got 9 reserve teams to play 9 goalkeepers. So what they've actually done is they've said, well, farm him out. If you want him, at the end of that, it's going to cost you this and that. So they're going to say, well, okay, it's going to cost you 5 million if you want him. They got him for virtually nothing. They got him for a couple of million. Now they've invested in that player. And I can see that coming into football so much, because now you're looking at a squad. But if you've got a squad of, say, 40, 50 players, now all of a sudden the manager turns around and says, I only want 24 in my squad. What are you going to do with the rest of them? Are you going to keep them, play them in the reserves, which I think should be reserves or A team? And the rest of them, are you going to farm out? And if they want, it's like sending players all over the place, John, and having having a price tag on each of them, for instance. And if they go to, say, for instance, Millwall, a player goes to Millwall, Millwall picks up their wages, they pay, and then Millwall like the player. At the end of it, go back to Chelsea and say, well, but we'll give you 10 million for him. And they buy themselves a top player. That is what's happening around the Chelsea. The accountant is going to be the most important person, because he can then, it's like the stock exchange, buy into a company and 2 years later sell it for an absolute fortune. Football's the only business in the world you can buy a player for 5 million and sell him 2 seasons later for 50 million. You don't get an investment like that coming back. So football, that's why the businessmen are in it. But you see, it's a different world there, John. That's their world. But I still talk about, you still talk about the football. Is this player worth it? Is this player not worth it? They're not bothered, because players are just numbers to them.
It's a worrying state of the game, though, isn't it? Because if we're turning football purely into a business, because Chelsea are almost like a supermarket for footballers, and they're sitting on all these assets. And if you've got 9 goalkeepers, and maybe you sell 2 for a lot of money, well, the profit you make from those 2 goalkeepers, you can write off the other 7, because it doesn't really matter.
Yes, you've hit the nail on the head, John. Supermarket.
Yeah, but I'm worried that if the game goes that way, it's kind of it's just basically going the road to nowhere, isn't it? Because then it becomes purely a business, and it's not about winning trophies. And I'm sure that all Man United fans all around the world, they just want to win silverware, and they want to see the team playing entertaining football.
But John, but then look at what FIFA are doing, UEFA are doing, throwing 8 games. 8 games. So in 42 games, add on another 8. That's 50 games. Add another 4 or 5 games for the FA Cup, the League Cup, and then plus the international matches. So what's going to happen is you're draining. You're saying, oh, we'll have more teams, more games, but we'll have more competition. So, and we'll have more people in the team, in the squad. We'll have 30 players now. And I scratch my head and I'm going, when's it going to stop? When are you going to realise that you're going to have a team for the league, a team for the FA Cup, a team for the UEFA Cup, a team, and the clubs are going to go, well, yeah, we're making money, and the smaller clubs are going to have to pick up the bits and pieces, and I scratch my head and think, where's it going to end?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Maybe we're getting towards the end of our conversation, because we've been on now for over half an hour. I think it's a good opportunity to mention a chat that we had on our sister channel, Vision Sport TV, where we chatted with Scott Michaels, who's trying to bring in the National Soccer League in America, and it's kind of a fan ownership model that's funded by local city councils rather than just dictators who own a football club. So I encourage people who don't know about it to go and watch I'll put the description and the link below to go and have a look at our chat there with Scott Michaels. And I know that you were quite enthusiastic about the possibility of maybe seeing the return of clubs like LA Aztecs and your team Chicago Sting, because these were the guys who were the heroes of the 70s and early 80s when we had yourself and Pele and George Best playing. And that was kind of an old romantic era of football when it was all purely about the game and about entertainment rather than, I know the players went there to earn big money, but it was based on, this is an entertainment game.
I had the pleasure of playing with Pele, and they've said Pele's here, Beckenbauer's here, Cruyff's here. These are players that could highlight any team in the world. They were all here. They were all pushing their Washington Diplomats, Seattle Sounders, Chicago Sting, New York Cosmos. You had Pele, you had Naskins, people like this that were playing. They said, well, we're going to bring the game into it. Then all of a sudden, the NSL, the demise of the NSL folded, and people said, oh no, that there's still kids wanting to play football. There's still kids wanting to learn the game. And yet now they're saying, oh yeah, we got this player, this player, this player, and this player. Those players, to me, couldn't lace the boots of half the players that were here and were trying to get the game going. One nice thing was that you had to have 5 American players playing. So that gave the young American players something to aim for and play with these great players and learn from these great players and take the game, because they become the next generation of player. And so now you're looking at it here and saying, well, okay, the next generation, it grew. You know, it was the fastest growing youth sport, but it's like you said, the Chicago Sting should have still stayed around, because that was a community side where, and I know that Los Angeles was the same, San Diego Chargers, Seattle Sounders. That's one of the great things about this, is that Seattle Sounders have stayed Seattle Sounders right the way through, even from the NASL days. And so they are what you call the foundation. You know, you've got the Cosmos aren't in existence now, so now you've got another team. But these names should have been kept and that's why I said to Scott, I'm with you on that, because it's part of their heritage in the soccer world to keep those teams alive. You know, and they could have quite easily have done that, but oh no, let's change. And you got to remember that they're franchises. So what happens is if we see teams go from one city, because it doesn't work, they move to another. You can't do that anywhere else in the world. You can't just move a team from one to. We did it, Wimbledon, Milton Keynes, but Wimbledon still stayed there as a team. So I love what Scott's trying to do. I think it's going to be an uphill battle for him, but I'm with him all the way of trying to bring that nostalgia back.
So as I said, if you want to know more about the National Soccer League and the potential for it to come back, have a look at the video over on Vision Sport TV. Meantime, just to sort of finally wrap up and bring it back to Manchester United, we all saw Jim Ratcliffe with his head in his hands on Sunday against Liverpool. Is obviously thinking that this job is a little bit harder than he might have thought it was going to be. I mean, I know you're not one for making big predictions, but how long do you think it's going to take Manchester United to get back to, and there's a bit of a leading question, but how long do you think it's going to take United to get back to being able to challenge for Premier League titles and the really big tournaments? Do you think we're a long way? I mean, I did a film with Nicky Butt last year and he's talked about 10 years. I don't think we can wait 10 years, but do you think we're going to have to?
No, you won't wait. No. I think you'll see it within a few years. I think because of the ownership coming in now and what they expect and what has been put in place, I don't think it's going to take that long. I think once they start to make impact and inroads into that, I think it won't take long before United get back on top again. But it's a lot of hard work and the right people in the right places. And buying the right players. That's, you know, as you said, John, Sir Jim had his head in his hands. Hey man, he better have big hands.
Yeah.
Because it's going to happen a few times. But hey, to me, I'm optimistic all the time about it. It will come right. It doesn't, I mean, I've seen the Liverpools go down for 5, 6, 7 years before they come back. And so, no, I think it'll be a few years, about 4 or 5 years, and they'll start producing it again. And I think then you can see the fruits of people's labour. But it's going to be a tough old road. You can't go down a mine without having to dig yourself out again. And getting into something is, like you said, soccer's a simple game, complicated by coaches, and it all depends how complicated we become.
I'm an eternal optimist. I'm hoping that we can do something in the next couple of years, but I know that it's probably going to take longer. And I also know that, having worked in the media all my life, how important it is to end that losing run, because if we keep losing, the pressure can actually eventually kill you, as in it can be the end of Erik ten Hag, because if he keeps losing, the media pressure and the fan pressure, it comes to a point we can't see the stadium half empty 30 minutes before the end of the game or 20 minutes before the end of the game, as we saw against Liverpool, because that can't continue. So just to wrap up then, how important is it that we get a good result against Southampton, and what do you think that result is going to be?
I think I think we'll get a result against Southampton, and I saw the game, Southampton's game. I think we'll get a result against Southampton, and I think we'll scrape by. We'll get it. I don't think it'll be a dominant one, but I think that Southampton will look at us trying to take some points, especially at their place, and with the history between the two clubs. It all depends how much. It all depends, John, how much these players want it. It's great playing at Old Trafford. When you go away, nobody likes you. They all want to take points off of you, and so they'll be trying extra hard. So yeah, I'd like to see. Well, I'm not going to say. I'm going to say that we're going to get a nice result, about 2-1. On a final note, before everybody goes, I'd like to say to everybody, I've got to take my hat off to Jack Draper, who played yesterday some fantastic tennis that I've not seen from British players in many years. I loved the way he played. I loved the way he attacked. I loved the way that he finished. And it showed me the British tennis has got something for the future. And the nice thing about it is Jack's a United supporter.
Absolutely. At least he's not a Scotsman.
Well done,
I must admit, tennis is my other big sport that I really, really love. And we have got some good players, because we've got Emma Raducanu as well, who won the, I think it was the US Masters, wasn't it, that she won? And maybe it's time to become tennis fans, because football's not coming home anytime soon, is it?
No, I know. But Raducanu, no, she's not a tennis player to me. She really isn't. I'm sorry. And I play tennis at very good levels. And I tell you what, I'm sorry. I mean, everybody says she's unlucky. She's just not good enough.
Do you think she peaked early then?
No, I just think it was the circumstances around it with COVID and everything else. I really do. But I've seen her since, and no. There's one. I mean, that's British tennis for you. But Jack Draper yesterday.
Jack Draper, then, United fan. Let's all get behind Jack Draper.
A United fan. Well done, Jack. All the best in the next round, sunshine.
Okay, cheers, Gordon. Fantastic.
Cheers, Johnny.
It's always a pleasure.
All right, mate.